Today's Harlem Renaissance subject is house rent parties.
My, they have a new expression along the Harlem way that tells you when a party is 10 times more than gay. You say that things are jumping, leave not a single doubt. Watch all these cats, watch everything when you hear somebody shout. This joint is jumping, really jumping. Come in, cat, and shake your hands. I beat this joint is jumping.
House rent parties originated in Harlem during the 1920s and played a major role in the development of stride-style piano. A rent party was exactly what it sounds like, a social occasion where tenants hired musicians and charged the door admission to pay their rent. In his 1938 narrative, Harlem Rent Parties, Frank Bird wrote, "Like the Charleston and Black Bottom, it became an overnight rage. Here at last was a partial solution to the problem of excessive rents and dreadfully subnormal incomes. There was a lot of competition to get people to come to your rent party. There might be as many as 10 to 12 happening in the same block on a given Saturday night. The people throwing the party had to advertise by printing business card-sized invitations with catchy slogans. A party given by Rose on 133rd Street, Apartment 5 said, 'You can wake up the devil, raise all the hell, no one will be there to go home and tell.' The cover charge was usually a quarter plus and an extra 10 cents for food and another 10 cents if you wanted a cup for drinks. One of the draws of the rent parties was the unlimited supply of illegal Prohibition-era alcohol. Bars were set up in the kitchen or hallway, and often the bathtub was filled with grain alcohol known as bathtub gin. Langston Hughes attended many rent parties during the era and said they were places where awful bootleg whiskey and good fried fish or steaming chitlins were sold at very low prices. You don't drink at these parties for the taste.
Is your memory of the first thing that sparked your interest in dance?
Oh, well, that I always had.
That I always had it.
Oh, yes.
From what age?
I don't know.
Beginning with what age?
I used to dance at house rent parties.
Uh-huh.
See, the house
Did
rent
your
parties,
mother
my
have
mother,
house rent parties?
to pay the rent.
So
Yes.
if you will explain
I
house
was
rent
there.
parties to the young who will be looking at this. What
Well,
was a house rent
House
party?
rent party is a person on Saturday night. You have a party. You serve pig feet, sauce, bad whiskey, and everything is 25 cents. 25 cents to come in, 25 cents, and then at a certain time when the piano player would be playing everything, get up, it's time to dance, and I dance on cue. I get ice cream.
They used to have rent parties. This was in the late 30s, during the 30s, and it carried on during the 40s and then the early 50s. It even went into the 60s, where they would have rent parties. They'd be all over the community. People would pay to get into the party, and the sponsor would pay their rent with the fees that they collected. But most of the revenue came from the food that they sold at these rent parties. They'd be all over town. You could run out of nighttime before you ran out of parties to attend. There would be so many of them, and they even had what they call waistline parties. Whatever your waistline was, they measure you at the door, and that would be your admission, and that was all about fun, dancing and etc. were recorded music, and you know, there would be like a disc jockey. His job wasn't speaking on a microphone like they do today, or dubbing the music. It was just playing records. Put on a stack of records, and you dance to those.
When did the rent parties start to drop off?
When people started robbing the sponsors, it became very dangerous, and that they disappeared with that.
What years?
We're talking probably the late 60s, early 70s. The community became a different thing. It wasn't as sociable, it wasn't as friendly, sociable as it was before. Something else happened in that same time span. The neighborhood was saturated with drugs, and that was part of the crime, contributing to the crime factor. The drugs were here, and that was fine until as long as it stayed in this community, the black community. But when it tripped over into the Cajun community, it became a problem. And society became, as long as it was in the black community, it was fine. But that didn't work too well. So we still have the same situation today. We still have people trying to figure out how to pay rent. And we still have drugs all over the place. And it's going to be here.
It was important to have live music, but there wasn't room for a lot of musicians. That would mean less room for paying customers. Fortunately, a new style of piano playing was developing in New York that made it possible to have one instrument play for the whole party. It became known as Harlem Stride, and it exploded at house rent parties in the 1920s. Harlem Stride is a solo piano style that uses percussive left-hand figures to create a complex swinging 4-beat pulse by striding up and down the keyboard, alternating low bass notes with mid-range chords, while the right hand plays melodies and melodic embellishments. The list of artists who took part in these parties include Duke Ellington, Fats Waller, Willie the Lion Smith, Lucky Roberts, and the man considered the father of the stride-style piano, James P. Johnson.
Jitterbug.